Ayala, court wrapped up early today as the defense presented its fourth day of testimony in the Karen Reed murder retrial in Massachusetts. But we are continuing our coverage of the case by bringing you today's best testimony. Now, Reed faces up to life in prison if convicted of second-degree murder in the death of her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe. O'Keefe's body was found on the front lawn of a house owned by fellow officer Brian Albert. While prosecutors allege that Reed hit him with her SUV and then left him to die in the cold on Albert's front lawn, the defense claims that someone inside the Albert home beat up O'Keefe and then dumped his body outside. Today, the defense called a snowplow driver who cleared the road outside the Albert home in the early morning hours of January 29, 2022. On direct, he testified that he saw nothing out of the ordinary.
What do you do?
I work for the DPW. I work in the Highway Division.
And the DPW stands for Department of Public Works?
Yes.
For which town?
Town of Canton.
And what are your duties, or strike that, around January and late January of 2022, what were your duties for the DPW?
I would plow.
All right, now directing your attention to January 28th and 29th of 2022. Were you on duty as a snowplow driver that night and early morning?
Yes.
When did you learn that you would be on duty?
Early January 28th, we were notified that we had a 2:30 start time.
And that would be 2:30 a.m.?
A.m.
On January 29th?
Yes.
How did you learn that you would be on duty?
Our supervisors for the DPW would notify us.
Who was your supervisor?
William Walsh.
And what instructions were you given in terms of when you were to report?
We were to report at 2:30 in the morning and prepare our trucks for plowing.
As of January 29th of 2022, were there any obstructions on any part of the windshield that would prevent you from having a clear view in any direction through the windshield?
No.
Once you got into that truck in those early morning hours, how far could you see in front of your truck?
As far as my eyes would let me see.
And how far could you see diagonally?
Diagonally, probably, again, as far as my eyes would let me see.
All right. Now, you get on the road. When you plow, is there a particular method that you use?
Yes.
Describe that.
I start in the middle of the road and work to the right, angling the plow to the right.
When you entered Fairview Road from Cedar Crest for the first time on your route, would 34 Fairview be on your right or your left?
On my right.
And can you give the jury your best estimate of when or what time was it when you first encountered 34 Fairview Road on January 29th of 2022?
About 2:40, 2:45.
That would be a.m.?
A.m.
And when you were passing 34 Fairview Road or encountering it at that point, what did you know about who lived there?
I knew the Alberts lived there, and I knew that Brian Albert was a police officer, first responders.
Now, aside from the lighting on your truck, were you aware of whether there were any street lights in the area of 34 Fairview?
Yes.
Could you describe those?
Sure. There's one before you get to 34 Fairview driveway, and there's one after Fairview's driveway.
Do you have a memory as to whether or not those street lights were working on January 29th of 2022?
I do not have a memory of that.
All right. But in any case, how much of the lighting of your Franken truck was illuminated at that time?
All my lights were working.
So you're now driving up Fairview Road, and 34 Fairview's on your right. Taking into account the lighting conditions that existed, especially on your truck, how much of the front lawn of 34 Fairview could you see?
I could see all the way to the front door.
What obstructions were there at the time when you first passed the Alberts residence?
None.
Were you familiar with the area of the flagpole on the left side of the property?
Yes.
Now, when you are plowing, sir, where is your attention focused?
My attention's focused out the front window, to the right and to the left.
Why?
I am looking for pedestrians. I'm looking for residents that may be backing out, not aware that I'm there, and God forbid, animals.
How much of the time that you're plowing are you scanning the road?
All the time.
Now, as you're passing 34 Fairview, could you see the area of the flagpole at 2:45 in the morning, sir?
Yes.
What was on the ground on the Alberts lawn at that point in the area of the flagpole?
Nothing.
Did you see a 6'1", 216-pound man lying on that lawn?
No.
Now, after plowing Fairview with the Alberts residents to your right, what do you do?
I go to the very end, take a left on the Chapman Street, back down Chapman Street, and then take a left back onto Fairview.
And are you plowing the whole time?
Yes.
So you get to, in this diagram, Exhibit 49, we don't have to turn the lights off. I think we can see it. You're traveling in a down direction, correct?
Correct.
And you would hit Chapman Street. Is that fair to say that's at the bottom?
Correct.
You do some type of three-point turn and go back down Fairview?
Yes.
How long does it take you to get from 34 Fairview the first time to get to Chapman Street?
Maybe 5-10 minutes.
And then how long does it take you to get from Chapman Street back down so that you're now passing 34 Fairview again?
Again, about 5-10 minutes.
And when you're coming back down, what side of the road is 34 Fairview?
On my left.
When you pass 34 Fairview at that time, are there any obstructions preventing you from seeing the front lawn?
None.
Was there any difference in the lighting on your truck when you were coming back down?
No.
Where is your attention focused when you're passing 34 Fairview on your left?
Again, out the front, right and left.
And how much of that front lawn are you able to see on 34 Fairview when you're coming back down from Chapman?
I can see everything. I can see right up to the front door.
What did you see on the front lawn of 34 Fairview on January 29th of 2022 when you're making the second pass by 34 Fairview in the area of the flagpole?
I saw nothing.
All right. Now, you've made an up and down pass, sir, correct?
Yes.
Once you pass 34 Fairview for that first up and down pass, where do you go?
I then go do Spring Lane, and I do that top and bottom.
And is there a point in time when you come back to the area of Fairview Road?
Yes.
That second time now that you're coming back, I'm counting the up and down pass as the first time.
Okay.
You with me?
Yep.
That second time now that you're coming back, about how long is it after the first time?
About 45 minutes.
So now it's about what time that you're coming for the second time to this area?
3:30.
And when you come back to the area of Fairview Road, this second time, are you on the Cedar Crest side, which is on the top of Exhibit 49, or the Chapman side, which is on the bottom of Exhibit 49?
I'm on the Cedar Crest side.
And when you approach it from the Cedar Crest side, are you approaching from the same direction that you did for the first time up and down pass, or a different direction?
Same direction.
All right, so you're now coming down Cedar Crest again, correct?
Correct.
Fairview's on your left.
Yes.
Did you take that left, or did you do something else?
I did not take the left. At that point, I could have taken the left. I can make a decision depending on how much snow there was on the ground. I ended up going all the way to the end as if the first time.
All right, and you did your same turnaround in the cul-de-sac?
Correct.
And now you're approaching the intersection of Cedar Crest and Fairview again, correct?
Yes.
What do?
I take the right onto Fairview.
How was the weather at 3:30 in the morning when you're now in that area of Fairview and Cedar Crest?
It's snowing fairly hard now.
Do you recall how much snow was on the ground at that point?
Maybe 2-3 inches.
And at about 3:30 in the morning, how far could you see in front of you, again, straight and diagonally in front of you?
As far as my eyes would let me see.
As a result of the lighting on your truck?
Correct.
Now, you take the right onto Fairview. Describe for the jury what you see in the road at that point.
As I make my right onto Fairview, I notice that there's a vehicle on the right-hand side roughly in the area of the flagpole in front of 34 Fairview.
Okay. And did you make note of what type of vehicle that was?
Yes.
What type of vehicle was that?
A Ford Edge.
What direction was that vehicle parked when you saw it?
It was parked nose going up Fairview.
Toward Chapman?
Yes.
So you're coming up from behind it?
Correct.
You see the rear of that vehicle?
Yes.
And was it parked adjacent to the Albert property, or was it across the street from the Albert property?
Adjacent to the Albert family.
And how close to the area of the flagpole was that Ford Edge parked at 3:30 in the morning?
I can't give you an exact measurement, but looking at the front door, it was about 3 feet to the left of the front door in the area of the flagpole, so in between the front door and the flagpole.
Now, what caused you to remember that there was a Ford Edge parked at 3:30 outside the Albert's residence that night?
For as long as I can remember, they have never parked a vehicle in front of their house. They've always had enough ample parking in the driveway.
All right, remember one of the Albert family vehicles was a Ford Edge. All right, we need to take a break, but first we have an up. Let's turn back now to the Karen Reed murder retrial. We are bringing you some of the best testimony of the day today. A snowplow driver testified on direct examination about the one thing he saw while plowing outside the Albert home, and that's nothing. Take a listen.
What policies or protocols of the DPW are in force when vehicles are parked on the street or the road during a snow emergency?
There is no parking allowed. We are supposed to notify our supervisor when there is a vehicle in the way. At that point, the supervisor will make attempt to call the resident or have the police show up at the resident. And then if they can't get the car removed, the car gets towed.
Sir, did you follow protocol that night?
I did not.
Why not?
Knowing the Albert family, knowing that there was a first responder, I gave them respect and opted not to follow procedures.
How did the presence of that Ford Edge parked on the side of the road affect your direction of travel?
I had to go around the vehicle.
How did you maneuver around it?
I had to maneuver to the left, go up, and then maneuver back right into my lane, and then continue up Fairview.
And at any point when you were maneuvering to the left and then angling back to the right, could you see part of the front lawn of the Alberts?
Yes.
Were you able to see any part of the area around the flagpole?
Yes, as I maneuvered back right.
And when you maneuvered back right and saw that area, what, if anything, did you see on the ground in the area of the flagpole?
I saw nothing.
All right. So now you've passed 34 Fairview again. Where do you go?
I go back to the top of Chapman, and again I do a left and a right and head back down Fairview.
Another three-point turn.
Correct.
So now you're doing your second up and down, correct?
Correct.
All right. So you then enter Fairview again, coming back down from Chapman. And how long does it take you to get back down to the area of 34 Fairview?
Again, about 5-10 minutes.
Now, you are now approaching 34 Fairview, and it's on your right or your left this time.
Again, it's on my left.
What, if anything, did you see in the road at that point?
Again, I saw the Ford Edge. in the road.
Now it's on your left side?
Yes.
Did it appear to be in the identical position as when you came up the street toward Chapman?
Yes.
How much of the area of the flagpole were you able to see this time as you're coming back down from Chapman?
It was obstructed, so I wasn't able to see as much as the first time, but I was still able to see the flagpole.
What did you see on the ground in the area of the flagpole at now 3:35, 3:40 in the morning?
I saw nothing.
All right, so now you've done your second up and down pass, correct?
Correct.
Where do you go?
I go back out on the Cedar Crest and I continue to do the rest of my route.
Now, at this point in time, did you do more of your route or spend more time away than you did between the first and second time?
I did more of my route staying away from Fairview.
And about how long did it take you before you came back to the area of Fairview Road?
About 3 hours.
So what is your best estimate of this third time that you're now approaching Fairview Road?
About 6:15
And that'd be a.m.?
a.m.
On January 29th?
Yes.
All right, let's bring in our guest for this hour. Joining us to discuss, criminal defense attorney Silva Megerditchian. Silva, great to see you as always. Always a pleasure to have you here on the program. Talk to me about Lucky's testimony. Look, he's a nice enough guy. I'm sure he's telling his truth. I have no doubt about that at all. The question is, what does it really mean and how does it help the defense's case?
First of all, Michael, always a pleasure. You know, I adore you, and thank you for having me on. Look, Lucky is very likable. He testified in a very plain way to the best of his ability, and I think he did well for himself. I don't see it as changing anything. And the reason I say that, it's hard to believe that he remembered the precise aspects of all his testimony and what he observed in 2022. And I think if you have the jury together in the back room talking about it, I don't think his testimony has the import that's necessary to kind of change what's going on in anyone's mind. But he did well for, again, what he was supposed to do. And again, Mr. Brennan is so exceptional in his cross-examination. Either way, I just don't think it swung one way or another.
Yeah, I mean, let's look at it practically, right? You have this guy going by, he says about 3:30 in the morning, doesn't see anything, right? But what we know now, based on the testimony in this trial during the Commonwealth's case, is that the phone basically stopped working at about 12:32, and from that point was steadily going down in temperature. So either the phone and O'Keefe were outside, or just the phone. That's perfectly, possible. But when you think about it, his body was outside because he died of hypothermia. If he was out there after 3:30, I don't think he would have. The guy went up and down twice before the third time he's there with the cops, or you see the cops there. So I'm not sure it sort of passes that smell test in terms of it really moving the ball one way or the other.
Michael, exactly. We have to also understand the weather conditions. Everybody testified it was one horrific snowstorm. Visibility was at issue. And this was a normal day for Lucky. He was doing his job as, plowing the snow. When we cross-examine prosecutorial witnesses who claim they remember everything like the back of their hand from 9 years ago, it's actually really fun for us as defense attorneys, because there is absolutely no way that someone in their normal position doing normal duties is really going to put their eyes out to certain conditions. It's just not possible. And then add weather to that. When the jury's in the room, I think his testimony is really not even going to be consequential to them.
Yeah, and Brennan's really good at cross-examination. So we're going to take a break here. When we come back, folks, the prosecution begins its cross-examination of the snowplow driver and questions him about alleged threats that he received about how he should testify. Well, we'll take a look at that when we come back. Keep it here on CourtTv Live. Welcome back to CourtTv Live. I'm Michael Ayala. We're continuing our special coverage in the Karen Reed murder retrial going on in Massachusetts. Court ended early today, so we're bringing you some of today's best testimony. A snowplow driver testified about plowing the area where the body of Reed's boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe, was found. Now, he told the jury on direct examination that he didn't see O'Keefe's body on the lawn of fellow police officer Brian Albert. This was at about 3:30 in the morning. Well, now we're bringing you some of his testimony on cross-examination, where the Commonwealth questions him about an alleged threat from a blogger.
During the pendency from that night until today, it's fair to say there are many times where you have been intimidated, isn't it?
No.
You've been threatened.
No.
You were aware, sir, that you were being threatened by an online blogger to expose you?
I was not.
You're saying as you sit here today, you have no awareness in the history of this case that you were being threatened by an online blogger?
I was not threatened by an online blogger.
Was the online blogger threatening or saying that he would expose you and tell personal things about you if you weren't helpful?
He was not threatening.
Let's remove the word threatening. Was the person communicating and making clear to you that if you didn't testify in a certain way, there would be some consequence to you?
Objection. Can we have a time frame, please?
Any time from when you first spoke to the private investigator until today, were there communications made to you by an online blogger that there would be consequence for you if you didn't testify in a way that was acceptable to them?
No.
You listened, of course, didn't you, to podcasts that were about you?
I did not.
People told you about them.
Yes, they did.
When friends told you about them, you knew who that person was that was making those claims, correct?
Correct.
You were well aware of the person had a very strong and large social media presence.
I didn't know how large or what his presence were, but yes, I knew he had a blog.
Well, you know now because you follow that blogger now, don't you?
I do follow him, yes.
Do you pay for a subscription?
I do not.
Did you get one for free?
I did not.
And in following that blogger, you know full well the power that person has to get attention from the community to harass, correct?
Yes.
And so during the pendency of this case, not only were you aware that you were being pressured to testify a certain way, you also knew there'd be consequences if you didn't. Isn't that true?
Objection.
I'm going to allow that.
The premise of that question is not accurate.
So he can answer that.
You knew there was pressure for you to testify a certain way in this case, didn't you?
I did not know I was being required to testify a certain way. I was also at the time dealing with the loss of my wife. I was not paying any attention to any social media.
Sorry for your loss, but you are aware during the pendency of this case that there has been pressure on you to testify in a certain way. Isn't that fair to say?
No,
Sir, you received a call from that blogger, didn't you?
I did.
And during that call, did you know the person was recording you?
I did not.
You later learned that the person recorded you.
I did not.
Do you know that your conversations were spread throughout the community online?
I was.
Sir, some of those communications or inquiries were claims that you would be exposed for personal matters if you didn't testify a certain way, weren't they?
No.
Inevitably, you've met this person, haven't you?
I've seen him. I haven't met him.
Have you ever spent time with him?
No, I have not.
Still a follower of that blog.
I am.
When you follow the blog, do you read anything or do you watch it?
No, I don't do much anything towards the blogger.
As you follow it, you can see there are oftentimes articles about you.
No,
Haven't you ever been encouraged to do the right thing?
no,
Haven't you ever been celebrated after you've testified in a way favorable for one side
Yes.
or the other?
yes.
And so when you were being celebrated, that certainly took off any pressure that there would be consequence, didn't it?
Objection.
Ask it differently.
When you were celebrated for testifying a certain way, did you find that to be encouraging.
Objection.
I'm going to allow it.
I did find it to be encouraging, but I did not want it. I don't think I deserved it. All I was doing was my job and telling the truth.
Did you enjoy the attention that you got?
I did not.
Did you pose in photographs with people who support one side or the other?
I did.
And when you were in those photographs, are you saying that you didn't enjoy the attention that you were receiving?
I did not. Again, I was trying to be polite and trying to avoid any confrontation that may come from something if I said no.
Well, did anybody from the district attorney's office ever suggest they would confront you or punish you if you didn't testify a certain way?
No.
How many friends contacted you about what was being said before you testified, the pressure? How many people told you about that?
I couldn't tell you. All my friends were telling me.
So you were hearing a lot of noise or information from your friend group and community about what was being said about you?
Yes.
So those of you who have been following this case probably know that the blogger that they're talking about is Aiden Carney, otherwise known as Turtle Boy. He's been a central figure in this case, or is actually facing witness intimidation charges in relation to a different witness. Well, our own Matt Johnson actually caught up. He's been in the courtroom and caught up with him on the stairs of the courthouse. And here's what he had to say about the claims that he tried to intimidate Lucky Lawford.
So I messaged Lucky. I introduced myself, and he said he didn't want to talk. So,
did you threaten him?
Absolutely not.
Say you revealed things about him?
Absolutely not. I posted the entirety of our messages with receipts on my Twitter account.
Now, Turtle Boy was actually on the witness list initially. His attorney got him taken off, so he's no longer going to be a part of this trial as far as witness is concerned. All right, we'll take a break. Coming up next, the cross-examination of the snowplow driver continues. Was he confused about where he said he saw a vehicle owned by the Albert family the night that John O'Keefe was killed? That's coming up next here on CourtTv. All right, let's get you back to the Karen Reed murder retrial. The snowplow driver is on cross-examination here. The prosecutor is questioning him about the discrepancies that he told investigators about seeing a Ford Edge vehicle on Fairview near the Albert home.
You talked about your meeting with the private investigator. The first time you met him, do you remember that meeting?
Yes.
Do you remember where you met him?
I met him at my place of employment.
Did you go anywhere with him that day?
No, I did not.
You had a conversation with him and you spoke about what you had remembered from that night?
Yes.
Do you remember when you spoke to that private investigator, you weren't sure how many times you went up and down Fairview that night? That you had said 2 or 3?
No, well, I told him I went up at 2:30 at 2. I told him at 3:30 I went up 2. Went up and down. And I told him about 3 hours later I went up and down. I went down and wasn't able to go around the police cruisers and had to turn around at Carriage Lane.
You mentioned that you believe you told the private investigator that you went up and down at 2:30. Do you remember when you spoke to the private investigator, you actually said 3 o'clock?
I don't remember the 3 o'clock.
May I approach?
Yes.
And before I do you remember you said that when you went on your second pass, it was around 3:15?
I told him I went up Fairview between about 2:40 to 2:45, and I said about 45 minutes later, I went for the second time.
Okay. Now, you had said 2:30, and you just now said 2:40 to 2:45, and then you said 45 minutes later.
Yep.
Okay. Do you remember telling the private investigator that when you think, or you said you saw a Ford Edge, you were actually still on Cedar Brook, not on Fairview, passing by it? You saw it from the street at Cedar Brook. Do you remember telling him that?
I don't remember.
Cedar Crest.
Cedar Crest. I don't remember ever saying that.
Sir, do you now remember when you were speaking to the defense investigator about seeing a car? You said that about 3:30 to 4 a.m., when you were plowing Cedar Crest Road, you looked toward Fairview Road and saw a small SUV parked in front of the house. Remember telling the PI that?
I never remember telling him that.
And do you remember telling those two law enforcement personnel that you believe that there were emergency vehicles, ambulances, or police cars in front of Fairview at 3 to 3:30 a.m.?
I do not.
Are you saying that you did not say these things to them, or are you saying that that's not your memory?
That's not what I said.
And so you're saying that's wrong. You're denying
Correct.
you made those statements.
Correct.
All right, let's bring back in our guest. Criminal defense attorney Silva Megerditchian is still with us to discuss. And Silva, Brennan is doing kind of exactly what you said, questioning his ability to really remember, showing that he's not remembering things exactly as he said one time or another. How do you think it's going for Brennan there on cross?
I mean, that's exactly what he wants to do, because he wants the jury to go back and nullify this testimony, because how can you be so sure of this testimony now, which is so different than before? And the testimony is so imperative because every minute counts. So the fact that he was so determined and direct to say certain times, and then Brennan showing him that it differs from earlier testimony or with the private investigator is huge, Michael. Again, I think this testimony is the least effective for the defense. Doesn't help them, doesn't hurt them. They kind of threw it and saw what happened.
But let me ask you this. There might be some hidden value in his testimony or undervalued element to his testimony. One of the things that was brought out was that Proctor never tried to talk to him. Right? So you would think if it was a thorough investigation, which of course is one of the things that the defense is claiming that there wasn't, that it was basically biased and it was, just biased towards Karen Reed. The fact that he never got talked to by the police, the lead investigator in the case, I think that would help them in terms of their argument. Hey, look, this is why we're claiming that there was basically confirmation bias in this case by Proctor.
Look, confirmation bias is always a possibility and a great argument for the defense, but I will say we have to not forget the weather conditions. By all testimony, the snowstorm was whiteout conditions. It is possible that they just thought this guy was just doing his job. What could he have possibly had seen? Because there was no visibility, and that was well testified to. Now, look, again, a juror who wants to believe in reasonable doubt or believes there's reasonable doubt will use this to their advantage. I just think the fact of the matter that he's so positive about what he saw from 2 years ago, and the timing and the fact these weather conditions were so poor, I just think nullifies the effect of his testimony. But really, it's up to the jurors and how discerning they want to be at the end of the day.
Yeah, I would have to agree at the end of the day. Again, it was snowing pretty hard that night. All right, Silva, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Always a pleasure. And to get your opinions here on the program, folks, I want you to stick around. Coming up in our next hour, we're going to continue with our best testimony of the day in the Karen Reed murder retrial. A witness who knew Reed and John O'Keefe testifies about the last night that she saw O'Keefe alive, and a sweet moment between the couple. Very important to the defense's case. CourtTV's Matt Johnson will have a live report and live coverage. So keep it here on CourtTV, your front row seat to justice.